102.5.
We start the conversation this morning on Alhaji and Alhaji, the mother of all talk shows. This morning, for the benefit of those of you who just joined us, our focus would be on the campaign against the Ghana-U.S. military cooperation agreement. Is it a case of neocolonialism and the sale of Ghana's sovereignty, as well as pressure mounts from pressure groups in the country? There were about 3 or 4 pressure groups which had discussions with the general public this week. Number 2, we would focus on an analysis of the 2018 Commonwealth Games in Australia, Ghana's performance on the medal table, the suspension of the Deputy Minister for Youth and Sports and the Director of the National Sports Council, and matters arising. I've already indicated my guests to help me do justice to the issues. Mr. Kwesipa Jr. is the managing editor of the Insight newspaper. Dr. David Percy, student of history and politics. Mr. Bernard Mona, national chairman of the PNC, and the Honorable Alhaji S. Suhini, member of parliament for Tamale North, are my guests this morning. So we set the ball rolling, and I'll start off with the Honorable Alhaji S. Suhini on our first topic, which has to do with the campaign against the Ghana-U.S. military defense deal. Honorable, good morning.
Good morning, Sammy, and good morning to my colleague panelists and also to our listeners across the country. It's great to be here, and I wish I could say same about the topic that we are going to discuss. Every time I read the agreements, especially in comparison with other agreements that we are told have existed in the past, and again other agreements other nations have gone into with so-called superpowers, in this world, I feel the more insulted that I have the kind of people who are leading us in charge of the affairs of this country. I think it is disappointing that we are at this stage of our democracy. I first of all also want to commend all forces that are mobilizing against this agreement. I was at the University of Ghana, Legon, this week, and I was impressed not only by the presentations of the panelists, which, by the way, was superb, but also by the enthusiasm and the numbers of people who showed, so much interest. And it is my hope that these forces that are mobilizing will not get deterred or discouraged along the line. I hear that there will be another mobilization in the northern region, Tamale, on 21st of this month, and I'm therefore using this opportunity to call on people who are patriots in and around the country, not just only in the northern region, but especially from the northern region, and Tamale to be precise, to leave some time on their schedules for 21st to be part of this movement. It is very, very critical. And when I was coming, I listened to the evergreen voice of our founder, His Excellency Dr. Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. And what he said about the need to thank God for just 1 minute for having taken them through, their struggle, which in some cases resulted in imprisonment and other, torture that they went through. So I want the people of Ghana, our generation especially, to understand that our forefathers have done it before. They have defied the tortures, they have defied the ridicules, they have defied whatever stood in their way to ensure that the sovereignty of this nation was seized from our colonial masters. And if it requires the shedding of blood every once in a while to keep the tree of liberty alive, I think that we will be shaking our responsibility as grandsons of the Osagefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah and his generation. Sabi, we are discussing a matter that has to do with our sovereignty, even though some don't see it like that. For example, when you talk about a military base and the establishment of one, as this agreement suggests, the president and his allies will tell you that they have assurance from the United States of America government that there will be no military base. Yes, our forefathers had assurances that there will be no colonialism, that there will be no slave trade. In fact, the slave raiders came to trade. Before colonialism was trade. They didn't just come as masters over our nation. They came using trade and sometimes religion. And so why are we unable to see that this is, just another form of enslaving us, just because they have not used the word slavery or they have not used the word base? If you critically read through the agreement that we have signed in 2018, it is clear that the US government over the years, and there are records to show, have always wanted to establish bases across the country, and Ghana has never been an exception. And because of the opposition it has received over the years, they have smartly decided to use different ways of eventually achieving the same aim of establishing a base. So they have entered into agreements with us in the past, but somehow one can say that if you look at those agreements in the past, our leaders then also were mindful of the fact that this could be, abused and eventually be used to achieve the aim of establishing a base. And so you will, if you read through those agreements, get the sense of an attempt to limit the control and influence of the United States government in these agreements. But what you see in the 2018 agreement is a blank check, eventually giving them what they want. And maybe just briefly, to tell you that this agreement shows that indeed they have gotten all they have been looking for all along, I will just read the conclusion part of the 2018 agreement. That will buttress the point I am making, that over the years, because of the resistance shown by the people of Ghana, the US government have used other smart ways of keeping a relationship with Ghana, with the hope and anticipation that eventually they will still have what they want one way or the other. So you will see that in Article 19 of the 2018 agreement, it concludes that this agreement, upon its entry into force, shall supersede the agreement between the United States and Ghana regarding the status of United States military and civilian employees of the United States Department of Defense temporarily present in Ghana in connection with the African Crisis Response Initiative and other activities affected by an exchange of notes at Accra dated November 24, 1997 and February 24, 1998, and entered into force February 24, 1998, and the agreement regarding the status of U.S. military and civilian personnel of the U.S. Department of Defense temporarily present in Ghana in connection with humanitarian relief operations in Southern Africa, effected by an exchange of notes at Accra March 22 and April 7, 2000, and entered into force April 7, 2000. So these were all other agreements that we entered into when they realized that the opposition to a base, such as the one that they want as contained in this agreement, was so strong, so that they could still keep a relationship with us. They have no use of those agreements anymore. With this in their back, it's a good deal for them. So they have no use of all those agreements from 1997, 1998, 2000. And so they are saying that eventually, as they have achieved their aim, all those other agreements that have guided our relationship with them in the past are of no consequence to any parties. Yes, because they have achieved their aim eventually with this agreement. Now, there seemed to be some confusion that I will also attempt to address, even though I know over the days many people have also looked at that, concern. It has to do with an attempt to politically equalize. And because I speak of other agreements in the past, it is important that I address that concern. Now, when I read the 2015 agreement, which is the one that is being used mostly to counter any argument that this 2018 agreement is, I wish I could call it a sale of our sovereignty, because I think it's a rip-off. It's usually the 2015 agreement. So I'm going to look at the 2015 agreement, because my reading of it tells me simply, Sammy, that it was a mutually beneficial military trade cooperation. Mutually beneficial military trade cooperation with respect for individual and national laws and, if you like, priorities. And it is stated so in that agreement. So for those who say that the two agreements are the same, it is like saying that you have a business and you have two children. You send your first child to go and enter into a partnership with another company that deals in the same business as you do, because we are talking military cooperation. So you send your first son, this our business needs some partnership and collaboration. So go and negotiate with this other party so we see how we can work together. So your first son goes, and in his negotiation, he comes back to tell you that I have an agreement, and the company says that we can exchange products and maybe clients. When you don't have a product and your clients want that product, this is the way we should agree, or we have agreed on how they will give you the product to give your client. And this is how you will pay, and this is how they will also receive payment. That is an agreement he brings to you. That, look, in partnership with this company, if they also have a request from their client, and their client, they cannot meet that request, and we have what their client wants, this is the modality that should guide how we give them the goods to give their client. And this is how payments should be effected between the two of us. So he brings you that agreement. Then maybe he becomes indisposed because the NDC is out of power, so indisposed. Then your second son is now the managing director of the company. And he goes to the same company to discuss existing collaboration. And he comes back to tell you, Daddy, I have an agreement, a new one, that is going to build upon the one my senior brother got. And this agreement says that our partner, in this case the United States of America, will use our warehouse to store their goods and equipment at no charge. But we will share the warehouse with them. But we will also establish an area for them. We will determine an area for them to put up facilities, including a warehouse and offices, which will be exclusive to them. We can't enter into it. Where they will do their trade and carry out their businesses on our compound, our premises, at no charge, at no cost to them. And when they are not in their offices, we will provide security for them. Let's be honest. Are you going to say that your two children have brought you the same agreement? Let's just be honest. Are you going to say that your two children have brought you the same agreement from the partner that you have been working with? And which of the agreement is in the interest of your company? One that says that we will have a mutually beneficial, if you like, collaboration, where we will invoice each other when we exchange logistics, and when we have weaknesses, we complement each other at a cost, because the 2015 agreement is actually about trade. And I will read portions to demonstrate. It's actually about trade. So he brings you, your first son brings you that kind of agreement, and your second son comes to tell you that he has allocated some portions on your premises, where some of the times your warehouse that you use, you will share with them to store their goods, and you won't charge them. And you will, in addition, give them, a land, an area, or a facility where they can put up their office infrastructure and warehouse and store their things at no cost. The two children cannot be said to have brought the same agreement. And we all know that. Now, the 2015 agreement has a simple headline because of what is expected of it. Okay, maybe before I go to even the headline, let me demonstrate what I mean by what do you call it, a mutually beneficial relationship. Now you have one of the articles. It says that Article 4, Terms and Conditions. It says each party shall make its best efforts consistent with national priorities. Do you get it? Each party shall make its best efforts consistent with national priorities to satisfy requests from other party under this agreement for logistic support, supplies, and services. However, when an implementing arrangement contains a stricter standard for satisfying such requests, the standard in the implementing arrangement shall apply. So you're talking about requests that is made of each other in the interest, or if you like, consistent with national priorities, and how those requests should be satisfied. It again says that, that's 2, says orders may be placed or accepted only by the points of contact or designees identified for the parties in Annexes B through K of this agreement. Now, it tells you what is going to be exchanged between the two, logistics and all those things. You come to Article 3.3 of the 2015 agreement again, and it says, all activities of the parties under this agreement and any implementing agreement shall be carried out in accordance with their respective national laws and regulations. All obligations of the parties under this agreement and any associated implementing arrangement shall be subject to the availability of funds for such purposes. That's trade. Unless otherwise agreed in advance, a party shall not place an order and receive support under this agreement and any associated implementing arrangement unless it has funds. So no party can even request, any services from the other unless you have funds to pay for it. That was the kind of agreement that was entered to in 2015. It goes on to say, if a party discovers that it does not have the funds to fulfill its obligations, it shall promptly notify the other party, who shall have the right to discontinue the provision of any support that was to be paid for with such funds. This shall not affect the obligation of a party to pay for support already received. So what it practically says is that if Ghana wanted anything from the United States of America, it needed to have funds to pay for it. And if in the process of that service being rendered, Ghana finds out that it is unable to pay fully, it is discontinued. The service will be discontinued, but whatever service has already been rendered will be paid for. In the same breath, if the United States of America wanted anything to do with our establishments here, they were going to be charged and they were going to pay for it. That's why I call it a mutually beneficial military trade cooperation, unlike the one that we have today. Again, in that 2015 agreement, you will see clearly stated what can even be traded and what can't be traded. So, under Article 3.4, you find the following. The following items are not eligible for transfer under this agreement and are specifically excluded from its coverage. 1. Weapons systems. That's A. B. Major end items of equipment, except for the lease or loan of general purpose vehicles and other non-lethal weapons of military equipment where such lease or loan is permitted under the national law and regulation of the parties. C. Initial quantities of replacement and spare parts associated with the initial order of major items of organizational equipment. However, individual replacement and spare parts needed for immediate repair and maintenance services may be transferred. So clearly, even in that trade cooperation, you had some things that the government of Ghana at the time insisted that they will not trade. Then you move on to 5, which says also excluded. Just a moment. It says using software, what do you call the soft copy is sometimes difficult. Trying to locate it. Yeah. Also excluded in this agreement, logistics support supplies. No, that's not it. But you see, if you look at 5 also talks about what is excluded. So the point I'm making is that the first son went for a trade cooperation based on mutual aspirations of the two countries. Now you look at the 2018 agreement. And maybe before I move to the 2018 agreement, it is important to also highlight Article 8 of the 2015 agreement. Article 8 says that the agreement, which consists of a preamble, and it is stated, and annexes A through K, shall enter into force upon the date of its signature. This agreement shall remain in force unless terminated by mutual written consent of parties, or by either party giving not less than 180 days notice in writing to the other party of its intent to terminate. So either through a mutual agreement between the two parties, a termination can ensue, or one party can write to request for a termination. Not less than 180 days notice must be given in that case. So my understanding of this provision is that the 2015 agreement has not elapsed, unless of course government can show us any letter that was written by the government of Ghana to say that we are opting out of the 2015 agreement, or unless they can show us that the two countries mutually agreed that that agreement should be set aside and a new agreement entered into. Because this provision in the 2015 agreement says that the 2015 agreement is still valid. And that is why I find it curious that the defense minister, when he wrote to Parliament, claimed that the agreements had expired and needed renegotiation. How did that agreement expire and when? Because the agreement says that it can only expire when the two of you mutually agree that it has expired. So is it the case that our government, led by President Nana Akufo-Addo, looked at this trade cooperation agreement and decided that it has expired and decided to put it aside and to grant unfettered access to the United States of the United States forces without any reciprocal benefit apart from the $20 million that we hear. Nothing. And that's why I'm saying, if you look at the 2015 agreement, there is nowhere that obligation is put on Ghana that is not on the United States of America. It is a mutually, it is a cooperation where it says that each party, these are your obligations in entering that agreement. But the defense minister writes to Parliament and he says that with the expiration of the said acquisition and cross-servicing agreement, and taking into consideration the present trends in peace and security. How did it expire? How did the cross-servicing agreement expire? Cross-servicing agreement, that was the 2015 agreement. Now the 2018 agreement expands it to say the government of the Republic of Ghana on defense cooperation, and they are now going to define in the 2018 agreement the status of United States forces, access to and use of agreed facilities and areas in the Republic of Ghana. That is what all the 2018 agreement is doing. Whilst the 2015 was as he himself put it, cross-servicing agreement, where you service each other mutually and got payment for it. The 2018 agreement is simply saying that they need to clarify the status of the United States forces and also access to and use of agreed facilities and areas in the Republic of Ghana. So when did the cross-servicing agreement expire? I ask again. And how? Who wrote to opt out? If it was mutual, what informed that mutuality or mutual agreement? My suspicion is that this government was unaware of the 2015 agreement and did not know the contents of the 2015 agreement. They simply started negotiating, and the United States government, you can't blame them. President Trump has already told us he's a good negotiator, and I think with this agreement he has a campaign message for 2020, because simply our people in authority didn't show any mettle, they didn't show any knowledge or understanding of relationships that has existed between Ghana and the United States of America in the past. And you see it repeated many times in the letter that was sent by the defense minister to Parliament, that the agreement, the cross-servicing agreement, lapsed in duration. Here, for example, under background on page 2 of that document, it says that the acquisition and cross-servicing agreement has lapsed in duration. That's not true, unless we know how. Therefore, the need for this agreement to ensure a continuation in the cooperation undertaken between the two countries. That again, cannot be accurate. Then to the agreement itself. Like I've already said, the agreement was simply expanding and defining the status of the United States forces and also granting access to facilities and areas. And I want us to also focus on the stress on facilities and areas in the 2018 agreement. You see none of that in the 2015 agreement. You see none. But the stress in the 2018 agreement is on facilities and areas. And so those who want to see a military base being written, and you hear some of our friends who are in civil society say facilities can also be like Burma camp is a facility. So if that is the case, why the inclusion of areas? And if you read the definitions that are in the 2018 and Article 1, areas are defined. United States forces, for example, in 1 says the United States forces means the United States Department of Defense. So wherever you see United States forces, just don't think of soldiers. Think of the Department of Defense. It means Department of Defense, including its constituent organizations and all of its property and equipment and material and its military personnel. So you see that, don't think of soldiers where you see United States forces. United States forces includes military personnel. But it actually talks about the Department of Defense and all its arms. So we will have established in Ghana a Department of Defense of the United States. So that is why even in the agreement, emphasis is also placed on contractors and U.S. civilians working with the military. Because when you go to the Department of Defense in the United States, it is not only soldiers you see. So they are going to establish that office here. And in the first agreement, again, the 2015 agreement, they say is the same as the 2018 agreement. There's nowhere you will see contractor. There's nowhere you see constructions. Even in cases where it says that they can modify where they will live, it is said that they will be built for it. And you are saying in the, I mean, if they have been living at Burma camp, that is what the reference was. So if they come and they are living at Burma camp and they want to even do a pavement, they will be built for it. That was the agreement. You don't see that in the 2018 agreement. And you go on to, and so if you are looking for a military base, you won't find a military base because the US government knows that if they put a military base in there, the opposition will be stronger. Then military personnel is also defined. It says it means members of the United States Armed Forces present in the territory of Ghana in connection with this agreement. So we're talking about an arm of the United States government stationed in this country and requesting facilities and areas. Yes, so if you say existing facilities are already being used, what about the areas? What will they do there? The agreement tells us what they will do there. The agreement where it talks about facilities and areas that can be shared can apply to maybe the existing facilities that our friends are being deceived with, because those facilities are shared. So for example, Burma camp is shared. When they have to do an operation here that we will charge them and they come, they don't have exclusive rights to it. So if they have a place where they stay, they come and stay and do whatever they will do, and we'll charge them and they will go. The Germans also use those facilities. Other countries use those facilities. But when they say areas and talk about their contractors coming down and putting up constructions, and those areas exclusively reserved for them, what will they be constructing? What will they be constructing? And why? And the insulting part is that when they do those constructions, we will have no access to it, but we will provide security around it. We will be the watchmen around it, especially when they are not in those facilities at the areas that they hope that we will give them. Agreed facilities and areas is also defined. It says, means the facilities and areas in the territory of Ghana as described in Annex A. And that is my curious mind tells me what is in Annex A, because Annex A was not attached to this document that came to Parliament. So it says, facilities and areas in the territory of Ghana as described in Annex A. It was not attached to this, so you don't even know where the areas are and what it means. And such other facilities and areas. And I want us to avert our mind to the stress on facilities and areas in the territory of Ghana as may be provided by Ghana in the future. So, to which United States forces, United States contractors, and others as mutually agreed shall have the right to access and use in connection with this agreement. What will they be doing? What kind of areas are we talking about? Now you go to Article 2. The purpose and scope of the 2018 agreement. And it says, this agreement clarifies access to and use of agreed facilities and areas by United States forces, thereby facilitating training, including to maintain unit readiness, combined exercises, and other military engagement opportunities. So, you look at the scope and purpose of this agreement, and you'll be intellectually dishonest to say that the scope and purpose of this agreement is the same as the ones that we have had in the past. Because the purpose and scope, if you look at them, are not the same, like I've demonstrated for some time now. Now, I know that you have already discussed some of the very annoying parts that talk about the status of the military personnel and civilian personnel and how they can travel into this country using just cards, ID cards, without passports in some cases. But I also want to reiterate the exclusivity that I spoke about, which is captured in Article 5, access to and use of agreed facilities and areas. The one says Ghana hereby provides an unimpeded access to and use of agreed facilities and areas to United States forces, United States contractors, and others as mutually agreed. Such agreed facilities and areas or portions thereof provided by Ghana shall be designated to either for exclusive use by United States forces or to be jointly used by United States forces and Ghana. Ghana shall also provide access to and use of runway that meets the requirements of the United States forces, not our requirement. So that's why I'm saying that this is likened to your second child coming to tell you that he has given part of your warehouse, which can be used by you or your company and your partner, and in some cases there's an area that they can put up theirs that will be exclusively theirs and used by them. Now, maybe my conclusion, Sammy, when I read through this and listen to what do you call it, comments from the president and people who think that this whole opposition is much ado about nothing, is that perhaps they have not read the agreements. I suspect they haven't, because it will be very, very amazing for anybody to read the two agreements and come to the conclusion that they are the same. And I'm not saying this because I think that any agreement at all is even worth having. But we live in a world where today no nation can be an island. And so in whatever relationship you have with other nations, what is important should always be the interest of your nation and your people. And when you have a relationship such as the one we are beginning to develop with the United States, that grants them everything and leaves us with nothing, we must all be worried. I took you through some of the exemptions that were in 15 agreement. In the 2018 agreement under Article 7, the first blank check that the United States government is given. United States forces are hereby authorized to preposition and store defense equipment, supplies, and material, hereinafter referred to as prepositioned material, at agreed facilities and areas. The prepositioned material of United States forces and the agreed facilities and areas or portions thereof designated for storage of such prepositioned material shall be for the exclusive use of the United States forces. United States forces shall retain title to the control over the use of prepositioned material and shall have the right to remove such items from the territory of Ghana. No exemption made to any material that they bring in. The second blank check is under Article 11, importation and exportation. It says United States forces may import into and export out of and use in Ghana any personal property, equipment, supplies, material, technology, training, or services in connection with this agreement. Such importation, exportation, and use shall be exempt from any inspection, license, other restrictions, customs duties, taxes, or any other charges assessed within Ghana.
All right.
And you just find out that, I mean, everything else that you look at in this agreement is in the favor of the United States of America. I'm yet to see a single one in this agreement that you can use to say that this will also work in the interest of Ghana. But finally, maybe if you permit me, just a bit on the president's response, because I wasn't privy to your discussion last week. And his response convinced me that indeed he and his men have not taken the time to read, at least to read the agreements, this and any other agreements or collaboration that we have had with the United States government. Apart from his reckless posture, which over the period has emerged, you recall that during the cash for seed scandal, a lawyer of his caliber was not expected to pass judgment on the investigation even before it concluded. But he did. in a very reckless fashion. That same week he addressed the nation, he also appointed justices of the Court of Appeal. And at the swearing in of these justices, he once again made a very reckless pronouncement to the effect that he was asking the justices to help the special prosecutor in the fight against corruption. And to my mind, I was wondering how a president could be that reckless. You appoint a special prosecutor that many suspect is full of vindictiveness, and so he is going to be used to witch hunt political opponents. But with confidence in the laws and workings of the laws in Ghana, the opposition still says we will meet your prosecutor in court with our lawyers. Then you do what is required of you as president, appoint justices. So one cannot fault you and suspect that these are the justices you want to do the do for you, because you are supposed to, swear them in. So you appoint them and swear them in. But at their swearing in, you leave them in no doubt at all about what you want. They should go and help your special prosecutor. Remember that the special prosecutor is going to come against people who will be innocent until proven guilty. So you are talking about two parties coming before these justices, and you are asking the justices to support one party, in this case the special prosecutor, to do his work. How reckless can one get? So I wasn't surprised when many people thought that his address was going to calm nerves. It turned out rather to heighten tension in this country, because I think that, as illustrated by many in the past, like Kofi Kumsen and others, like David Thorpe of the Center for Strategic International Studies, who in 2012 warned this country that His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo was the single most biggest threat. I mean, the single most big, let me say, the biggest threat, not the single most, the biggest threat to the peace and stability of this country. All these people's cautions came to my mind. And President Kufuor's caution to the party delegates not to choose someone who will heighten tension came to my mind when he spoke that day, mindful of the statements earlier on the cash for seat saga and the swearing in of these justices. And again, he was dishonest. He simply demonstrated ignorance in many, many aspects of his address. I'll leave it here, and I hope that I'll have a second bite. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Suhini, for your submission. Brilliantly done. We move on to Mr. Bernard Mona, who is the National Chairman of the PNC, for his thoughts on our first issue for this morning, which has to do with the Ghana United States of America Defense Cooperation Deal. Mr. Mona, good morning. Yeah, your microphone is on.
Good morning. I'm almost in tears because this morning in fact, since last night, the United States of America with France and Britain have decided to do the unthinkable in Syria. They have, at this moment, in less than 70 minutes, thrown over 110 missiles targeting strategic installations in Syria. And the reason why they have done so is to accuse the Syrian government of chemical attacks on its own citizens. At a time that the Syrian government is almost in control, full control of the entire country, one wonders why they will be putting chemicals on their own citizens at the time when they have taken control of Juma. You know that Juma was a very difficult place after the Americans sponsored people to try to overthrow the Syrian government. Suddenly, when they realized that with the support of Russia, the Assad regime has been able to take over Juma, they staged what they call chemical attack, and on the pretext of that, they have launched many missiles into Syria. Just in 17 minutes, they've launched over 110 missiles in Syria. Assuming that each missile killed one person, how many people have they killed in 17 minutes so far? And we are dealing with a nation that can be ruthless. We are dealing with a nation whose senses sometimes are beyond ordinary imaginations. And our government is taking the United States as if they don't know what they are about. The United States can plan something they want to achieve in 200 years, but they can start the planning today. And so when we wake up, and it is the United States of America that our government is entering into an agreement with, we need to be cautious. In fact, not just the United States of America, any other government in this world. There must be people who will take any agreement word for word, read it from top to down, and also from down to top, in order to get the meaning of everything that they are requesting for. So if you permit me your document, I think it was on Tuesday, I had the privilege of speaking at the Accra Technical University, where the Coalition for Ghana's Sovereignty organized a forum. So we speak on the dark days reincarnated. I was privileged to be on the platform with Kwesi Pratt, with James Agalga, who is a lawyer, since they are looking for experts. And I was also privileged to be on the same platform with David Agbe, who is a security expert and analyst. So since they are looking for experts, we had an expert in law, and we also had an expert in security affairs, because David Agbe is an instructor at the Kofi Annan Peacekeeping Center. And I think on Wednesday, I was privileged again to be at the Faculty of Law Auditorium, where I listened to, again, Kwesi Pratt Jr. I listened to Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, a lawmaker. And I listened to a security man par excellence, whose voice you played, Brigadier General Nunu Mensah. And of course we had Ken Ahosu, a lecturer at the Legon Center for International Affairs and Diplomacy. And lecturers are always lecturers. He went into the history, brought out the facts, and posed a number of threatening scenarios for us as a people. What he advised us on that day was that we should stop talking English, and that we should move into communities and take this document and explain it in the language that our people speak and understand. That is the only way we can cause our people to rise to reject this obnoxious agreement that our government has signed. And I agree with him. Because last Saturday, I was on my way to the University of Cape Coast when I got a call from one radio station, I think OKFM. With my 2x4 tree, I managed to put together the reasons for our opposition to this agreement. Soon after I finished, I was listening to the radio station to see the comments. Then a deputy minister for information, Madame Dokua, called into and said she was listening and she wanted to respond to the issues. She went on a long history of agreements that were signed on 24th February. Take note, 24th February, and what it means in Ghana anyway. That was signed 24th February 1998. And that it was signed again in 2015. And that word for word, they just lifted the same agreements and they added a little polishing to it. And so they don't understand why we are doing this. And that as she was speaking to us, the 1998 agreement and 2015 agreements were still in existence. She went on to even make some damaging revelations. That when Ghana was having its, what do we call it? Disputes, maritime disputes over our maritime borders with Cote d'Ivoire, that Ghana was very much aware that France will come with their guns to support Cote d'Ivoire. And so Ghana is also entering into this agreement to bring the United States into Ghana, such that anytime France want to show their muscle, the United States will stand up to them. That was what Madame Dokua said. Worst of all was that soon after Madame Dokua, they called the Ashanti Regional Chairman of the MPP to come and talk about this document that we are told should be in the hands or should be discussed by experts. And suddenly, my namesake Bernard Antwi Bosiako went to me. Is an expert. I am not qualified to be an expert, but he is qualified to be an expert, and he came running down everybody and virtually insulting on the show. At the end of the day, I listened to the anchor of the program who described him as Chairman Bakope, maybe for running everybody down. So it is on that score I agree with Ken Ahosu of the University of Ghana that sitting in Accra and doing English is not sufficient to bring to the fore the issues that are in this agreement that totally amount to Ghana being put on Don't Call Me. And bells ringing, don't call me, oh, don't call me. Ghana for sale, don't call me. So, and I go back to the fact that this Ken Ahosu stated that long before today, persons like Gabi Ochridako had insisted that Ghana should accept to have a military base because the US want to establish military bases. And that there will be opposition from people like Kwesi Pratt and the Socialist Forum. This is Ken Ahosu who was talking, and I'm sure all of you who were there. And that he has seen and read the article written by Gabi some time ago, and that persons like Kwesi Pratt, the Socialist Forum and their likes will oppose this agreement. Take note that this is what has been said. So now the United States is made to target Kwesi Pratt and members of the Socialist Forum because they will oppose this because they are seen as anti-America. Our president, and I say this without any fear, in his speech on Thursday, 5th April 2018, also made a very dangerous statement. He said, those of us who are opposed to this agreement are reckless, and that we express anti-American sentiments. In my opinion, it amounts to the president of Ghana inciting the United States of America against his own citizens. I hope you get it. The president of Ghana takes liberty to tell the United States of America that these citizens of mine are opposed to you. Deal with them anyhow you want. So today, if the United States of America, by the fact that they will have unimpeded access, they will land here without anybody knowing what they have come to do, and go out, decide that over the night, they will come and pick me up from my room and take me straight to Guantanamo Bay, will the president of Ghana come to my defense? Because he pointed to the United States, who are the real opponents of the United States of America. That should be a cause of worry. And that is the reason why a security analyst, David Abe, said that by this particular pronouncement, the president of Ghana has turned down the oath of office that he ascribed to, and therefore is even to be subjected for impeachment. This is the position David Abe holds. And I find that it sits well. Because if you go to, I think page 185 of the Constitution to page 186, the president's oath of office, to the extent that he will protect and defend all of us, and suddenly you are giving us out to foreign, I don't know whether brutalization, or you have given the citizens to the United States of America to deal with them as they think fit, is something that is very worrying. I have also said, and I think that I took this from a lecturer from the Accra Technical University, and those of you who check Facebook, you will see what I put there. What the lecturer said is that, why are you people talking so much? You shouldn't talk so much, because this agreement is like you have accepted a guest. I didn't say, what do we call it? Those who rent, how do you call them? A tenant. A guest is different from a tenant. You accept a guest into your house, and you tell the guest that in this house, no rules apply. You can do anything, you can go out, you can come, whatever you come with, I'm not going to inspect it. So you have your wife and your kids around. So that guest can do anything he or she wants, not so. So he will come after your wife. Go after your children. Do whatever she wants to do with them, because no rule or restrictions apply. And indeed, when you even feel that your wife has been abused sexually or otherwise, or your kids have been abused, you say that if there is even any complaint, it cannot be tried in the laws of Ghana. It should be tried according to the laws of the United States. That is the total summary of the agreement that we are talking about. And I agree that there couldn't have been a better and a simplified version of this agreement than what I was told or I heard on that day. You see, as I said on the 5th of April, the President Akufo-Addo decided to make his pronouncements on the subject matter. Even if the President did not tell us he was angry, we could see, we could hear from the pitch of his voice. And indeed, as I've said, I was in a vehicle listening to. But the way the speech was going, I doubted whether it was actually President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. At the moment, I thought it was Abronya DC. So I jumped out of the car and went to watch on television. And you could see the president's face. He was more than livid. He was burning. He couldn't wait to ventilate his anger to citizens. And at the end of the day, he told us that he was outraged. The anger of the president will not lead to the evaporation of the sea, nor will it lead to the melting of the Sankana rocks or Ombo rocks. What citizens are requiring of our president is that, are we right that what we are reading is what we are signing? The president failed to come and tell us. And all the president did was to rather engage in something that, if you want to use appropriate words, you will be seen as insulting an elder. You'll be seen as insulting the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. And so you fail to fall for temptation, let me put it that way. Otherwise, how could Mr. President come and say that the agreement we signed, because we are oblivious of how peacekeeping is done, is the same thing that our soldiers and other security persons, when they are on peacekeeping mission, they go through? U.S. is not coming to Ghana to keep peace. Indeed, U.S. is coming to Ghana to use Ghana as a base to launch an attack on others. Ken Ahosu says this, that for a very long time they have been trying to get into Nigeria, and Nigeria has been very vehement in their opposition to U.S. coming closer to them. Because all of us know that Nigeria has its own crisis, and there is even attempts at secession. And even in the face of Boko Haram, Nigeria refused to accept any support from the United States of America. Today, they have come closer to Ghana, and they will use Ghana as a transit as per the agreement. So, if by the agreement, let me see, let me just read this portion. It says, Article 2(3). United States forces may undertake the following types of activities in Ghana: training, transit, support, and related activities. Transit. What does transit mean? And it goes further, and this was the point James Agalga made that it even made me a bit disturbed. He said, under the same thing, he said, transit, support and related activities, refueling of aircraft, landing and recovery of aircraft, accommodation of personnel, communications, staging and deploying of forces, and material. It's not material. What is the meaning of material? Because the U.S. will not make a mistake. So in you are a lawmaker, I don't know what material is. This word. This is what James Agalga is asking, the full implication of what material means. That word is not material. Even material, you will find it difficult to define the scope of material. Now that it is not material and is material, how does our Minister for Defense understand material? And we agree that material should be brought into Ghana. They should deploy material. So does that include atomic bombs, weapons of mass destruction, and what have you? We do not know. Again, Mr. President says in his address that the U.S. did not request for a military base, and that Ghana has not given a military base. Let me use my village analogy again. That you have a farm, not a farm, you have a parcel of land, a shong, and Suhini comes for you to give him a portion of your land. You very much know that Suhini is coming to plant maize. He will rear some cattle on some part of the land. he would do some vegetables in toast, jende, moko, and inadwo. But because Suhini did not say he was looking for a farm, you too come to explain to your children that Suhini did not ask for a farm and you have not given a farm. What is he doing on the land? He's harvesting fish, not so. What is he doing on the land? Planting of maize, rearing animals, doing vegetables on that parcel of land. It's not farming. What is it called? And Ishan, you take the liberty to come and tell your children that Suhini did not spell out that he was looking for a farm and that you have not given him a farm. Define for us what you have given or what Suhini asked for. In this, what we are being told is that the term base has not been used and therefore they did not ask for a military base. But don't we know that the definition of a base includes an installation, a facility or a post where you have military equipment and personnel commanded by a commander? Is that not exactly what they are asking for? So because they did not use the term base, Mr. President, you too come and tell us that it's not a base. Jesus Christ. And so we are forced to agree with Mr. President that it's not a base. But this could be more than a base. So the argument is that what is it that is in there that is making our government so convinced that we should enter into this very bad agreement that everyone is speaking against? Nyaho Tamakulu is an opponent of the president of Ghana, not so. Okubo is an opponent of the president of Ghana. Jerry Rawlings is an opponent of the president of Ghana. And I say this advisedly, because given the newfound love that exists between Jerry Rawlings and Akufo-Addo, I wonder whether Akufo-Addo still sees Jerry Rawlings as an opponent. But all these have spoken against this same military agreement and stated in clear language that this is very bad to the state of Ghana. So to bulk all of us as political opponents who are reckless, self-seeking, and who are anti-America is to say that all those persons in his own political party who are opposed to this are also reckless, they are self-seeking, and they are expressing anti-American sentiments. Where does this sit with us as a people? How is it difficult for our president to know that there comes a time where people are able to distill between partisanship and nationhood? Then you have the likes of what is it, Captain Odro? Is it Odro, the Deputy Defense Minister, who comes to say we can't do anything about this because Parliament has ratified it. So Parliament has not ratified agreements before. I thought that the Ameri deal, Parliament have ratified it. Didn't we constitute a committee that was even eventually sponsored, the Addison Committee? That was actually sponsored by Ameri itself to go and do investigations on them. We did, because we thought that there was something inimical. Car power, wasn't it an agreement from Parliament? Have we not come to doctor that agreement and even extended the 10 years to 20 years? When at the time we said that it was a bad deal, we have come to increase and extend their lifespan. The criminal libel law was a law. Parliament has taken steps to ensure that that law has been revoked. In fact, recall that when Osafo Mafu was Minister for Finance, President Kufuor passed a law on import duty on rice and poultry. When the poultry farmers noticed that that law was not being implemented by SEPS, and they went to court to compel its implementation, Osafo Mafu went to Parliament and sought the revocation of the law, and it was revoked. It was a law that was passed to protect the interests of our poultry farmers and our rice farmers. What did we do? So, going even beyond and deeper, you will say that the bond of 1844 was also an agreement that allowed us to become a colony, to become subservient to that of the United Kingdom. Did our people sit down for it to survive? No. There was massive fight, protestation, agitation, boycotts, and everything was put inside to ensure that inimical laws are opposed. As for this law that is before us, Mr. President, you claim you are angry because people have said that you have sold the sovereignty of this country. It is more than a sale of our sovereignty. Because laws of Ghana do not apply. We will not take any benefit from the United States of America. In fact, if you read the agreement, the more you read it, the more you get this. Look, you don't want to associate yourself with being a Ghanaian. Because content by content, Article 1 to Article 19, there is nowhere Ghana is going to benefit in any form, material or otherwise. Everything is to protect America. So why would we engage in this? And so it is important that the many calls that have come, indeed there were conflicts, because on the 17th there was supposed to be the group in Ashanti region was organizing an event in Ashanti region. A group in Takoradi was organizing an event in Takoradi, and we thought that it's important that these things are done properly. So Tamale is coming on the 21st, and I am not a person who plays with numbers, because I do believe that once an idea is potent, even if it is one person that leads that crusade, it makes the same impact. But I can assure you that people are beginning to appreciate the bad nature. And you know, when we put people in office and they refuse to read, they don't give us any hope. This is not the first time it appears we are signing agreements without going through them. Osafo Mafo signed a debt cancellation with Germany without understanding what he was leading Ghana into. And when he was asked, he said that it was written in Deutsch. But all he knows is that about 200 million euros was going to be given to Ghana as debt cancellation. And so he went to sign that. Question is, what are the conditions attached to the debt? You don't know. And you are happy as a minister to go and append your signature. The president did not sack him, and he did not resign. He stayed on. Our Minister for Defense, whose ignorance, who has led this nation, in my view, to causing financial loss to the state, because we have been told that this agreement before Parliament was not executed either by the minister or the president. And yet it was taken to Parliament for our Parliament to sit down there and go through the rush with which they passed this agreement. And on that day, I sat throughout. In fact, I got to Parliament before the parliamentarians came. I was there from that morning until almost at 8:30 or so. After the minority left, I still stayed in there. I just wanted to listen to the arguments that ensured that we should sign this agreement. And it was more than shallow. Beyond the committee's chairman's report, and beyond what Yao Boabing Asamoah did, his animation that is displayed there, and it was the Minister for Interior, Ambrose Derry, who spoke first before the Minister for Defense. And the Minister for Interior, who is a lawyer, very respected lawyer, a senior brother, of course, comes to say that, look, no one should say that the agreement was not executed. And that why this agreement was brought to cabinet and that the president chairs cabinet. And because the president chairs cabinet and the memorandum accompanying the agreement to parliament indicate the cabinet decision, it means that the president has endorsed it. Then I noticed that, Master, we are not sitting on zero. Because that was the potency of his agreement. And then Nitu will come to say, no. Why? In 1998, they signed the same thing. 2015, they've signed the same thing. Why are they saying that we should not sign? So we will sign it because we did wrong in the past and we are enjoying to come and do wrong today. So after all, Nana Akufo-Addo doesn't represent the thing they call change, because he's coming to continue with worse things that have been done in the past. And so if wrongs have been done in the past, Nana Akufo-Addo now has the capacity to come and upgrade the wrongs. We say no. And what I even find very amazing is that anybody who opposes this agreement is categorized as an NDC. And maybe it is an attempt to say that, look, people to shy away, because if you are not NDC, you should not oppose this. And so once you don't want to be associated with NDC, you will want to stay away. This is a call to national duty. The NDC, MPP, PNC, and Co-Minini, all of us came because there is a Ghana. So those who are sitting outside, and when you want to talk, they say, but we know you are NDC. Who cares whether, so NDC, are they not Ghanaians? Or because they are NDC, they are estopped from talking about the ills and dangerous things that this nation is going to enter into? I am worried in many fronts that by allowing the United States to set up their base here, Mr. President, listen, base here in Ghana, we may suffer the kind of things. Look, Russia is being accused for so many things. We have been told that in Salisbury, what have they done? That Russians have gone there to poison some people there. They are doing the same in Syria. So the United States can actually come to Ghana, move to Benin, to Togo, to Nigeria, to Burkina Faso, and do things, and it will be seen as Ghanaians. And then we'll be having dangerous conflicts. And when we are in this danger, they will run away. So my conclusion is that we will not stop, because Mr. President has failed to answer the questions that are raised in this agreement that are dangerous, that stand in the way of our independence, and capitulate us and subordinate us as a nation that doesn't matter. We will not stop, because we feel that the presence of the United States forces here under the military base will give more danger to our nation. We will not stop, because our laws are being compromised. Indeed, U.S. soldiers will enjoy more than liberties that they cannot even enjoy in the United States of America in Ghana. We will not stop, because everything and anything that the United States is bringing into this country will be free of duty. They will not pay anything. We will not stop, because our soldiers will become watchmen and watchwomen over U.S. property in Ghana.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mona, for your submission. I welcome your thoughts, your views, and your comments on our first issue. Send them to me on Twitter and on Facebook using the handle at Samuel Eshen GH. Eshen, I spell E-S-H-U-N. They are all spelled together. So you go to Facebook, you search for me. You go to Twitter, you search for me, and you can start sending your comments through. I'll go straight to Dr. David Percy for his thoughts on our first topic. Dr. Percy, good morning.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sami. Indeed, it's very difficult to be measured in addressing the subject matter before us, such as the depth of treachery to our common interests that one can easily be accused of going overboard. But the first thing one can say is that our president has, in the first place, violated the oath he swore on the 7th of January, I believe, 2017.
17.
Okay. Which is to preserve and uphold the Constitution of Ghana, because he has entered into an imposition, because I think it's improper to call this an agreement. He has accepted an American imposition that ousts our Constitution and the laws of Ghana. By doing so, he is in fact guilty of treason. Now, my difficulty is that he has been aided and abetted in this by his quote-unquote cabinet. Now, ordinarily, you would expect our parliament, which represents the sovereign people of Ghana, to hold the president in check. But contrary to what any patriotic Ghanaian would expect, Parliament has also aided and abetted this treason. So it now lies in the hands of the sovereign people of Ghana to resist this treacherous imposition and to say no way. And I have been observing from the sidelines the mobilization that has been ongoing to that effect. My colleague, Mr. Benamona, has spoken to an impending manifestation in Tamale. The least that one can say, one can expect, is at least one major exhibition like this, at least once a month, for as long as it takes to change the track and the trajectory of our president, to arrest this treason and stop it from happening. You know, one of the things that has been missing from or appears to have been missing from the conversation so far is the motives of the United States of America, why it is proceeding the way it is proceeding, and how come it is possible to have in a country like Ghana a constituency that would allow treason, allow the gross betrayal of our interests to happen. But actually, this thing has been going on for close to 500 years. Through our first contact with the Portuguese in the various European countries on our coasts, it has developed in Ghanaian society a section that sees its interests align with those of the foreign invader. So that you find out that in our history, you have a long line of people you can call stooges, you can call puppets, you can call quislings, you can call agents of foreign domination, you can call collaborators, can call traitors. You can take your pick. Basically, you find them at many levels of Ghanaian society. Persons who are quick to hand over what belongs to us collectively in exchange for the crumbs, which enriches them and makes them privileged and powerful. So in the Ghanaian media, you find people who have no difficulty with this so-called agreement. It could only have been procured through blackmail or bribery or both. And now we are at a stage where, through a fraudulent process, the impression has been given that our parliament itself was involved in the commission of this treason, because they, quote unquote, examined and agreed, when no such thing has in fact happened. Now, there are people who put their faith in the judiciary, that this matter will come up before the law lords and they will pronounce on the matter. And people expect them to do their duty, to do what the Ghanaians deserve, that is to throw this thing out. But I've told those who are waiting in earnest for that to happen, not to celebrate yet. Because, as I've made a point, the mentality and the idea that you can gain by betraying the collective interest, by siding with the foreigner, is very well entrenched in our thinking and our culture. Along the coast, you might find sayings that suggest that siding with a foreigner brings benefits. Yes, along the coast. You find in various proverbs and what you might call sayings, indications of that thinking. So it is something that has been very deeply ingrained over 500 years. Now, the difficulty is that those who commit treason against our collective interests are not punished. On the contrary, they are promoted to places of honor, which therefore encourages others to think that they can also aspire to betray us, to commit treason against our collective interests, and that nothing will happen to them. They will merely be rewarded. What is surprising about our president is that a few short months ago, he was laying claim, or saying, insisting that his forebears were the very persons who brought us independence. Remember that 6th March discourse he started, I think, last year. Okay. Trying to revise our history and to insert his granduncle and his father in the long line of persons who ought to be honored and considered as founders of our nation. One could hardly imagine that I was merely laying the basis to sell us into slavery. And I made a point about the Bond of 1844, which in 3 short paragraphs started the process of our formal colonization. Now, in all the past attempts at colonization, colonizers have used quote-unquote threats as the basis, as the justification for the intervention. 500 years ago, more than 500 years ago, under the authority of the Pope, the Portuguese and the Spanish were given the task of civilizing the pagan peoples of the world, converting them to Christianity, saving them from Satan. In the last century, the principal instrument for exerting colonial control and preserving one's hegemony over others was to save them from communism. In this century, the new instrument has become that of saving people from terrorism. Now don't smile, this is a multi-trillion-dollar business. Okay? Where the United States maintains a global protection racket. The United States covets your land, it covets your waters, it covets your minerals, it covets the labor of your peoples. It wants to enter. You will not permit its entry because you are fully conscious of the interest of your peoples. So it lights a fire in your backyard. You've been struggling to enter through the front. You will not permit it. It lights a fire in your backyard and it shows up on your porch, ready with firefighting equipment to help you put out the fire. Solid in the knowledge that with the fire in your backyard, you will allow it in. So now we have on our hands a global franchise fighting terrorism. So the United States, under this imposition, will be granted not a base. I think that our president is right when he says that the United States is not going to get a base. The United States is going to get bases. There's not one place. You're going to get bases for the purposes of exerting new colonial control over our country and our policy, a new colonial dominion over West Africa. Its land, its resources, its minerals, its uranium, its gold, the expectation of vast oil reserves in the Sahel and the Sahara. Okay, all of those are tempting prices. So our president, under this Reasonable Act, is going to open up our country as a staging post for new colonial intervention in the sub-region. Is going to endanger our security. Because if we become hosts to America, which uses us, our country, as a staging post for intervention in other parts of the subcontinent, we will necessarily become linked with it in its crimes and are open to the retaliation of those persons and those interests who are attacked. It is very simple. Now, I cannot imagine that our quote-unquote security establishment could have agreed to this nonsense. Something that would clearly endanger our security. Okay. But I know that as an example of this breeders bill, okay, Planned Breeders Bill, okay, where you had various quote-unquote experts, scientists, going and saying that we should go for a deal because they saw in it avenues to improve their skills, to become exposed to new methodologies that they may only have read about. Okay? In the same way that it is possible for some security people to see in the shape of this imposition, opportunity to handle new weapon systems, and to become acquainted with new methodologies in warfare. But their concerns are very parochial and narrow. If they undermine our collective interests and our security, they have to go beyond their considerations about their individual career development and acquisition of whatever skills to look at the interests of the collective. There's nothing in this agreement that inures to our benefit. Not one thing. I've heard it said that, these agreements are common with agreements that the United States has in other places. And into the equation has been brought comparisons with countries like Japan and Germany and the United Kingdom and Italy. The point that must be made and made powerfully is that in all these places, the United States exists in neo-colonial control. There's nowhere in the world where the United States allows the policy of any country to fashion such that it puts the interest of those people first in any situation where it comes up against the interest of the U.S. Not in Britain, not in Germany, not in Italy, not in Japan. But in the case of Japan and Germany, these are former occupied countries that have been converted into allies. But the word ally itself may belie the situation they are in. It's an alliance where you have no voice, where your interests do not matter to the extent that they go against the interests of the U.S. And there must be no misunderstanding on this score. That it is a neo-colonial imposition, that wherever the U.S. exists, where it has bases, it exists in a position of a neo-colonial power. Now, the measures and the means by which they ensure compliance are many and several. In our countries, they can merely stage coups, they can organize the assassination or the execution of leaders, etc. But the purposes remain the same. The means that are used may vary. Okay? But it is for the purpose of maintaining control over us, over our economies, over our resources, in the service of the interests of the U.S. ruling elite. We must on no account allow this, because to do so will be to imperil our security, to expose ourselves to all kinds of dangers. But I made a point earlier that this is a $1 trillion business yearly. Once you are meshed in this web of quote-unquote protection, you are required to hand over vast sums to purchase arms. Okay? It provides employment. It provides profits to corporations and contractors. And by the way, the point must be made that in our country, when we speak of contractors, many people think right away of people engaged in construction. Okay. But a contractor merely means a private entity that is engaged in providing goods and services to the military. From mercenaries to the construction of civil works and etc. And one point that has to be made, since we're talking about the base agreement in the context of what is euphemistically termed shared security interests. Now, in truth, there's very little shared interest between us and the US. Not in fighting terrorism or in any other matter. Indeed, if you look very closely into the history of quote-unquote terrorism in the last century, and especially in this one, you notice that what we now refer to as terrorism, sponsored by the likes of Al-Qaeda and ISIS and Boko Haram, are all US franchises, either having created by the US or by its agents and allies. I mean, if you go back to Al-Qaeda, for instance, you know that Osama bin Laden was a contractor to the US Army. Okay? He was recruited on the basis of jihadism, okay, in a campaign to destabilize and to overthrow the Soviet Union, which finally they managed to do. But since then, this has morphed and taken on various forms, supported by its client states in the Gulf, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, you name them. But what it does is that it allows the Americans on each occasion to come to your front door and point to you the fact that you have a threat in your backyard, to allow us in. And the historical record is that when the Americans enter your country, they never go. There's no record where the US has ever left a place willingly. There's no record. If they go, they'll come back. But usually they don't go. So this is what we are letting ourselves in. Now, we must not allow this. Many years ago, Nkrumah spoke to this, the dangers of allowing foreign bases. And we can speak to our own collective experience with the period of colonization, the period of enslavement before it, where our guests started with one stone on another stone, which then became fortifications that then could be used to impose their will. We have that experience. We must be guided by it. I can also say to our president and to his party that they may not be the last in the list of stooges of foreign control who have sought to do the bidding of foreigners, but that in every case they have been resisted and they have been defeated. And I have no doubt that in this case they will also be resisted and they will be defeated. That we can guarantee. I rest my case.
Thank you, Dr. David Percy, for your submission. Still here with us on Alhaji and Alhaji, the mother of all talk shows. It's 16 minutes after 11. If you just join us, you are welcome to the show. I'd like to hear your thoughts, your views, and your comments, and you can send them through this morning on Facebook and Twitter using the handle @SamuelIshenGH. That's how you get through to us to send us your comments, your views, and your thoughts on the issues we have tabled for discussion this morning. Mr. Pratt, good morning.
Well, good morning. Well, so far, other panelists have discussed the merit of the Defense Cooperation Agreement with the United States of America. Indeed, over the past week, there's been a lot of effort in trying to understand what this agreement really means. I do not want to pursue that tangent. I'd like to focus attention on the general mobilization that has taken place and its impact, the general mobilization against this agreement and the impact that general mobilization has made. But to start with, I'd like to state that I'm in full agreement with other panelists and indeed all other Ghanaians who have said that this agreement is a dangerous agreement, that this agreement is the type of agreement which will return us back to the gambling house of colonialism, and that it ought to be resisted with all the force that we can command. Since this agreement became public, the minority in Parliament tried to do its bit in order to stop its passage or its ratification by Parliament. Indeed, the minority stayed the walkout and subsequently has held a press conference and issued a statement on this matter. Following from there, various groups have emerged. The Inter-Party Coalition against the sale of our sovereignty to the US has emerged. Its membership has included the People's National Convention, whose national chairman is the spokesman of the coalition. It has included the Convention People's Party, the All People's Congress, and the National Democratic Congress. This group has also held a press conference and I believe has also issued a statement on this matter. Other civil society groups have come together to organize one massive and successful demonstration in Accra. And we are told that another demonstration is built for Kumasi and one is also scheduled for Tamale all next week. There have been a number of public fora on this issue, one at the Accra Technical University, one at the University of Ghana, and other places. And the momentum is gathering. Indeed, on radio and television and the newspapers, there have been vigorous expressions of disapproval to the signing of this agreement and its eventual ratification by Parliament. Something, however, was clearly significant in the course of the week. It is clear that a number of journalists and a number of presenters on radio and television have decided that this matter should not be discussed any further. Indeed, it is becoming very, very clear that there are a number of people in the media who want to douse the flames. There are a number of people in the media who do not want this matter raised again. This situation should mean that those of us who are opposed to this agreement have to do a lot more in order to stay in the media and to make the issue relevant. We need to do a lot more. We need to do so much so that the issue can no longer be ignored. We need to do so much that nobody can afford to douse the flames. We need to do so much to make it impossible for anybody to bury the issues in the dump of silence and so on. That is the challenge for those who are opposed to this agreement. Now, I'm told that the second demonstration is likely to take place in Kumasi. And I'm exceedingly happy that this demonstration is taking place in Kumasi. Why is that so? It is simply because even though Kumasi happens to be one of the support bases of the current administration, Kumasi also has a history of struggle against colonialism. Kumasi also has a history of struggle against foreign imposition. And I have no doubt at all that the history of Kumasi, the history of the Ashanti region, will prepare people to say to the world that we would not allow this to happen, that we would not allow the US to impose its will on us and to endanger the citizens of Ghana. The people of Kumasi cannot forget that Yasantua stood her ground, mobilized troops in order to resist the British attempt to take control of slave routes in Ashanti. We cannot forget that. We all cannot forget the fact that Yasantua is a symbol of Ashanti resistance against colonial imposition. And the spirit and the heroic deeds of Yasantua ought to inspire the people of Kumasi to pour out in their numbers against this decadent expression of a desire to walk with eyes open and ears wide open into the arms of slavery once again. Indeed, the history of Chinibu Akudya, the history of Akumfa Anochi, and so on, ought to inspire the people of Kumasi to say to those who want to impose another form of colonial rule on the people of Ghana that enough is enough and we would not allow it. Indeed, the people of Kumasi were to sit idly by and allow this imposition on us and allow the United States of America to establish a military base in Ghana, Okomfo Anochi would have struggled in vain. Yasantua's effort of standing up to the British colonialists would come to nothing. Indeed, if the people of Kumasi do not take part massively in this demonstration, it would amount to a betrayal of Prempeh, who was captured and sent into captivity in the Seychelles. The people of Kumasi, their own history, their own culture of resistance, their own expression of dignity and so on, ought to push them, ought to guide them into joining this resistance against decadence and against the sale of national sovereignty. And I have no doubt at all that the demonstration in Kumasi will be as massive as the demonstration in Accra, and that this demonstration will send a signal loud and clear to the authorities that the people of Ghana are indeed offended by this attempt to allow the United States of America to use Ghana as a staging post for the pursuit of its imperial ambitions in West Africa. And I look forward to this massive demonstration in Kumasi. Of course, for the people of Tamale, they've always been gallant and heroic when it has come to the defense of the national interests. Indeed, the people of Tamale stood side by side with Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah in the struggle against colonialism. The people of Tamale stood by side with the Convention People's Party in the era when some of our nationals, in collaboration with imperialist powers, sought to subvert our independence by employing all manner of terrorist tactics against the Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah and the Convention People's Party. In fact, the people of Tamale have a more urgent need to join this resistance because we are told that one of the bases will be established in Tamale. Indeed, the Tamale airport is going to be one of the staging areas that the U.S. Army will employ to wage its imperialist wars throughout West Africa. And therefore, the people of Tamale, more than anywhere else, have a great responsibility to stop this madness from happening. Because if they do not join the resistance, they will soon have a U.S. military base in Tamale, specifically stationed at the Tamale airport. And I expect the people of Tamale to pour out in their numbers, to pour out in their hundreds of thousands to protest this outrage. I expect the people of Tamale to rise to the occasion as they have always done, to demonstrate and to say loudly that we would not allow any U.S. imposition. That our government may be weak, but we, the people of Ghana, are not weak. And we can stop this outrage from occurring. My brothers, only last week, we got reports, indeed reports which were carried by the Daily Mail of Britain, that 54 women, Colombian women, have been raped by U.S. forces on the U.S. military base in Colombia. Indeed, those women included children, those women included mothers, those children included married women. All kinds of women, 54 of them, were raped by U.S. soldiers stationed on the U.S. military base in Colombia. What is worse is that these soldiers had the effrontery to videotape the rapes that they conducted and eventually sold these videotapes as pornographic films. What an outrage. Will the people of Tamale allow this to happen in Tamale? Certainly not. And I believe, I am very, very hopeful that Tamale will see perhaps one of the biggest protests against the attempt to install U.S. military bases in Ghana. I must say with all honesty that those of us who are engaged in the resistance against the establishment of U.S. military bases in Ghana are not united on all the issues. There are some of us who are outraged, and rightly outraged, at some of the provisions in the agreement. For example, that U.S. soldiers can come here and kill us, kill our soldiers. They can come here and destroy property. They can come here and break our laws and so on, and we have no recourse to justice. That's a justifiable outrage. So, for this category of people who are engaged in the resistance, if those clauses can be removed from the agreement, they will be comfortable with the agreement. This is a category of those who are engaged in the resistance. And I believe that they have very, very good reasons to feel outraged, and they have very, very good reasons to want those outrageous provisions in the agreement to be removed. Then there are those who say that yes, we can have the U.S. base here, but we do not accept the conditions under which the base will be constructed. That, for example, if you are going to give them radio spectrum, they should pay for the radio spectrum. Indeed, they must be subject to custom inspection, and that U.S. soldiers should not be allowed to come into a country simply by flashing their U.S. military ID cards and so on. And that indeed, if all of these are removed from the agreement, they would have no problem with having a U.S. military base in Ghana. This is a section of those who are opposed to the establishment of U.S. military bases in Ghana. Then there's a third category. And the third category is made up of persons who say that under no condition should we allow the establishment of U.S. military bases on our territory. That no matter what the agreement is, the U.S. must not be allowed to establish military bases in our country. I belong to this third category. And I belong to this third category because I believe firmly that we need to stay loyal to the ideals of the independence movement. I believe that it is important for Africans to uphold the banner of Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. I believe very, very strongly that it is important for Africans to uphold the banner of Amilcar Cabral, of Sekou Touré, of Modibo Keita, of Nelson Mandela, and so on. And what is that banner? Those who led the struggle for independence in Africa insisted that Africa should not be the gambling house of the imperialist powers. They insisted that African territory should not host foreign military bases. They insisted on building an Africa without a bomb, an Africa that is dedicated bestowed the promotion of the well-being of its people. An Africa that wants to see significant improvements in health delivery. An Africa that provides social housing for its people. An Africa that improves agriculture and so on. An agriculture that uses resources for the construction of bombs and so on to improve people's access to social services. I share that dream. I share the dream of Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, Modibo Keita and others. I share the dream of America Cabral, who says that for our collective defense, who says that when Africa is confronted with such problems as terrorism and so on, we need to act together under the ambit of an African high command established by Africans themselves to protect their interests. It is these forebears of ours who told us that Africa cannot pay second fiddle to any other state. It is these forebears of ours who taught us that we are capable of making our own mistakes. It is these forebears who taught us that we need to stand up and demonstrate that the African can hold his own. In the light of what they taught us and its validity, we cannot allow the establishment of foreign military bases on any African soil, not just on Ghanaian soil, but on any African soil. We have a duty to ourselves, to children yet unborn, to generations yet unborn, to resist oppressors' rule and to resist the establishment of foreign military bases on our soil. I must say, with emphasis, that over the last week, I have noticed something which is very, very healthy. I've spoken to people in government, I've spoken to parliamentarians, I've spoken to all kinds of Ghanaians. And it is clear that hardliners on the other side, the side which supports the imposition of U.S. military bases in Ghana, are beginning to tone down. They are beginning to tone down because the public debate clearly demonstrates that the agreement entered into with the United States of America is not in the interest of the people of Ghana. The public debate clearly demonstrates that the vast majority of our people are opposed to this agreement. The public debate has clearly demonstrated that the people of Ghana will not sit idly by and allow these bases to be established in our country and will resist. I think that this is largely responsible for the toning down and so on. But you see, we must never lower our guard. It's important for us to keep up our guard. And it's important, whilst recognizing that those who oppose us are lowering their rhetoric and so on, and even some of them are calling for a reconsideration of the agreement. Our objective will be to listen to them, to argue with them, but to insist on the dismantling of this agreement, on the rejection of this agreement, and making sure that Ghana is free of all military bases, whether American, Chinese, German, Russian, or Togolese. We have a duty to ourselves to do this. I have said over and over again that the purpose of establishing military bases in Africa, especially U.S. military bases, is simple. That purpose is to enable the U.S. to pursue its imperial agenda in West Africa and beyond. That purpose is to enable the United States of America to conduct military operations from our soil and make us vulnerable to attack from the targets of U.S. aggression and so on. The United States of America is not establishing bases in Accra. The United States of Ghana will not be establishing bases in Tamale and elsewhere in our country to play tango. It is establishing these bases for the purposes of killing and creating conditions for us to be killed. Our forefathers fought in the Second World War, a war which did not concern them. Our forefathers died. Some of them were maimed. And indeed, if you go to the Legion House, you still continue to see Ghanaian people who were maimed, who continue to suffer extreme poverty and neglect as a result of their participation in the Second World War on the side of the imperialist forces. We can stop that now by taking a number of measures. The first important thing we need to do is to study this agreement thoroughly. Study the agreement thoroughly so that you can talk on the agreement with some command. I've heard so many people who disagree with the agreement, making arguments on radio and so on, and when you listen to them very carefully, they haven't even read the agreement. That is not the way to resist the agreement. Let us study the agreement. Let us read the agreement. Let us study our history and the history of others so that we can put forward cogent arguments to prevent the establishment of the military bases. That is our first task. Of course, our second task is to participate in all the manifestations aimed at stopping the establishment of U.S. military bases in our country. And indeed, we have a duty to uphold our dignity. Only a couple of months ago, the United States of America issued a state, embassy in Accra issued a statement which simply said that our former presidents, members of parliament and ministers are not entitled to the protocol procedures for obtaining visas to visit the United States of America. They ordered our former president to queue up like anybody else to obtain visas to visit the United States of America. Don't you feel insulted? Don't you feel insulted that we are making it possible for U.S. soldiers to come into our country without going through the very processes that they want our parliamentarians, ministers, and so on to go through to obtain visas to visit the United States of America? As we welcome U.S. soldiers with open arms and treat them like Arabian kings and so on, hundreds of thousands of Ghanaians are being expelled from the U.S. as illegal immigrants. That should open our eyes. Why can't our government insist that the privileges, that because of the privileges and so on we grant to U.S. soldiers, Ghanaian citizens in the United States of America should be entitled to some very special dispensation? We say no to this agreement. We insist that no U.S. military bases should be established on our soil, and we, like Nkrumah, like Modibo Keita, like Malcolm X, like W.E. Du Bois and so on, are ready to join this struggle for the second liberation of Ghana and Africa from the clutches of imperialist imposition. We have no choice in this matter but to continue the resistance that led to our independence on 6 March 1956. This is a duty which is imposed on us by history, and we dare not fail.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pratt, for your submission. And that brings us to 20 more minutes to the top of the hour, 12, when we hand you over to the sports team to take over with the Gold Power Sports here on a Saturday morning. And I'll go through some text messages that I've gotten this morning. This one from Ni Bote sends the message: Sammy, the contractors will even include chefs to cook for them. They will create a whole township for themselves. This morning, America, Britain, and France have launched strikes into Syria. Where from? For military facilities or bases in nearby countries in the region. When they enter here, forget about agreement. They will not leave. We should be careful. Greetings to Suhini and the other panelists. I'll go to Twitter and read some tweets that have come through before I come to Facebook to read your comments on Facebook as well. And on Twitter, I start with that of Akutu Razak, who says, Ghana-US agreement indicates how weak the Nadu Bawumia handles the affairs of the nation. The most surprising thing... Okay, all right, now, okay. Let me start from the top because other text messages just came through and pushed everything down. This one from Steve Menz says, Comrade Pratt, I share your views as well. I like your courage and loyalty to Mother Ghana. I belong to your category. And you go on to say, yes, the Ashanti must wake up. Kumasi must be massive. Red. Kudos to Comrade Kwesi Pratt. This one from Paka. Ahiaba says, the organizers must go, to every media house, organize football parks in villages and towns with projector on the U.S. brutalities of women. A.U. Farouk in Tamale says, good morning to you. To my special MP, Dionobo Suhini, no amount of intimidation and witch hunt can prevent us from demonstrating our displeasure towards the sale of our sovereignty. And that's from A.U. Farouk. This one from Paka Ahiaba, which I was reading, I believe. Those will say 1 year. Paka, if you can take your time and send your messages out, I appreciate it. Some incoherence there. Now that we are gradually getting the full import of the military agreement between U.S. Ghana, J.J. Rawlings should realize the harm he did to himself. Ghana and the Black Ways when he supported Nana Akufo-Addo against ex-President Mahama. That's from King Crack, sending that through. Steve Mann says, every panel member is advancing reasonable arguments. The agreement as it stands now is null and void. Please go to court. Marcus DeMarc says, the lazy leaders didn't read and critically consider the merits and demerits of the imposition by America termed agreement. It will be fearsomely resisted with our last drop of blood. Ya Asante Etua tweets and says, I sincerely believe that this U.S.-Ghana military agreement must be well looked into and basically put first the interests of our dear nation Ghana ahead of any other individual or political party. Greetings to Mr. Mona. This one from, Delanyo Agbe says, Sam, it's obvious that anywhere U.S. military goes, there are atrocities. Ghana-U.S. military agreement must be withdrawn outright. Patrick Aaron says, I think that what Kokwaido who said was just a mere talk. Now that we are going to a serious revolution, it's important that government expand prisons to accommodate us. We shall vote against the government and the U.S. military. Habib from his home says, good morning to you and to your listeners. The Ghana-U.S. military deal is another slavery which Ghanaians must resist with our will and might. Let's resist this new colonialism a luta continua. All Muslims must resist the call to prayer with text messages you add. And that's from Pinto. Nyavi George says, good morning, sir. I'm so disappointed with the way this government is handling the affairs of this country. I doubt if this government really has the interests of Ghanaians at heart. And you sent that one through. Those are a few of the comments on Twitter that I can share with you this morning. Let me go to Facebook because I saw lots and lots of messages on Facebook as well, and let me go through them. This one says, good morning to you, Sami, and your panelists. I believe that Ghana is the gateway to Africa, then we must involve our neighboring African countries against this agreement. That's from Freeman Maunyaga, sending that through. Steve Adams says, good morning to you, Basami, and to your panelists, especially the Honorable Bernard Mona. My good, may God, richly bless all of you for the good work you're doing for Mother Ghana. I can't wait for 2020. This one from Victor Amankwa says, good morning. This agreement must be resisted at all costs and with all of our might. You sent that one through. Starring Wendell on Facebook says, good morning, Uncle Sam. If you have a president with the new colonialist mentality, what do you expect? The struggle will, however, continue. Prekese Kwame Aristocrat sends the message. The question is, which country is Ghana going to war with? That our soldiers need training in ballistic and nuclear warfare. What really is the reason behind this deal? That Akufo-Addo wants to please the U.S. than listen to Ghanaians? Kofi Kumsin, should come for his stone. That's from Prekese Kwame Aristocrat from Botiano. Musa Abatwa sends the message, good morning, nation. The invitation by the CID is an attempt to gag minority from exposing the rot, grabbing state funds and selling our sovereignty for peanut won't wash. Ghanaians are suffering. They should concentrate to better the lives and conditions of the people and stop looking for scapegoats. That's yours as well coming through. AU Farouk says, good morning to you, Ashen, and your able panelists, especially the Honorable Alhassan S. Suhini, Tamale North MP. In fact, no amount of intimidation or witch hunt can stop us from demonstrating our displeasure towards the sale of Ghana. Okay, I think I read this message on Twitter. Michael Amanin from the UK says, good morning, Sami. President Kufuor's speech about Ghana and the U.S. military cooperation pact was awesome, and it was loaded with facts and substance, because there are some frontline politicians who should know better but are today behaving hypocritically and mischievously as if they have Ghana's interests at heart. But as a matter of fact, they are political opportunists who are just seeking for their own selfish partisan interests. Those are a few of the text messages I can share with you for now. As we progress, if any other text messages come through, I will look at them. Okay, I think there's another one. Let me just read this one. This one says, okay, as a very young soldier in 1990 who passed out, we were launched into the Liberian War, where the Americans abandoned them, and it was Ghanaians and our Nigerian colleagues who sacrificed our lives there, whilst the U.S. only defended their citizens and watched the Liberians being killed. My brother, thanks for your excellent submission, and that's to you, Mr. Mona. That's coming from an ex-military officer, sending his comments through. This one from Lucy says, I mean, have you forgotten how the U.S. immediately they heard about the demonstration which was going to happen, issued a statement warning the U.S. citizens as to what to do and what not to do? They will create confusion in this country, and before we know it, they have evacuated all U.S. citizens and will be left on our own. President Kufuor must wise up. Those are a few of the comments I can share with you, and that brings us to 10 minutes more to the top of the hour 11. I doubt if 10 minutes would be enough to look at the matter of the Commonwealth Games in Australia and matters arising, but if we would all agree, we can use two minutes to touch upon the matter of the Ghana-US military deal. Any final comments from anybody is welcome at this point. Honorable Suhini Alhassan, if you have something to say.
Well, thank you very much, and let me see how well I can use the 2 minutes just to reiterate the point that people are not against this agreement just for the sake of it, but because of the threat that it poses to our national sovereignty, and also the manner in which it insults us as a people of integrity. So if you permit me, because I am very convinced that many people are speaking out of the text, I don't think they have read it. I'll just go through some insulting portions of it, because sometimes when you don't read it as if it's coming from the text, people think you are communicating your understanding of what is in the text. But when you quote it from the text, I believe that it is more acceptable. So, for example, under Article 12, freedom of movement and vehicles, vessels and aircraft. One says aircraft, vehicles, and vessels operated by or at the time exclusively for United States forces may enter, exit, and move freely within the territory and territorial waters of Ghana. Freely. This has never been in any of our agreements. 2. Aircraft, vehicles, and vessels operated by or at the time exclusively for United States forces shall not be subject to the payment of landing, parking, or port fees, compulsory pilotage, navigation, or overflight charges, or tolls or other use charges, including litterage and harbor dues levied by Ghana, its instrumentalities, or any subdivision thereof. However, United States forces shall pay reasonable charges for services requested and received at rates no less favorable, less taxes and similar charges than those paid by armed forces of Ghana. Do you get the import of that?
Yeah.
In fact, in some cases, the armed forces will pay more, Ghana armed forces. That has never been in any of our agreements. 3, United States government aircraft, vehicles, and vessels shall be free from boarding and inspection without the consent of United States forces authorities. So their vessels, their vehicles shall be free from boarding. Nobody in Ghana can board their vehicle or inspect it without their authority. That is in 3. And that has never been in any of our agreements. You have Article 13, driving and professional licenses. Ghana agrees to accept as valid, without a driving test or fee, driving licenses or permits issued by the appropriate United States authorities to military personnel and civilian personnel and United States contractors for the operation of vehicles. Even if you have an international driver's license and you go to another country, you need to be tested. You get tested. Yeah. But Ghana, no. We are saying that when they come, they can drive anywhere and anyhow they want. Maybe a final one, Article 15, claims. That is very, very crucial. It says, other than contractual claims, the parties waive any and all claims against each other for damage to or loss or destruction of property owned by the party, or death or injury to any military personnel and civilian employees of either party arising out of the performance of their official duties in Ghana. Now, what does this tell you? They are going to operate in Ghana. And so, as much as possible, the damage to Ghana will be more than...
As a result of the operation, people will die.
People will die.
They anticipate that people will die.
Do you get it? People will die. And there will be some casualties. But they are saying that when that happens, no claims will be made of each other. So, if the assumption is that people will die, you should know that it is more likely that the Ghanaian people will die because the operations will be carried out in Ghana. So they know that if they say that if our soldier died, there will be no claim. They know that as much as possible, their soldiers will not die. Their contractors will not die. But if anybody dies, they are saying that there will be no claims. And the crucial part of it, the second part of the claims, it says, claims by third parties for damages or losses caused by military personnel and civilian personnel shall be resolved by the United States government in accordance with United States laws and regulations. So those who are talking about international law, no. This agreement says that claims by even third parties, for example, if your vehicle is hit, I'm using a basic example, by a U.S. vehicle, the U.S. government vehicle, in the course of their operations in Ghana, it will be settled using United States laws. You have no claim to make. They will determine the claims. And this leads me to the hint that the base may even be in Tamale. And this is important, especially because of the upcoming demonstration. Yes, part of the base will be in Tamale. Now, we all know how we cherish our religion, especially, and what it prohibits. One of the things that I think we have not even discussed very well yet, especially after our president went on, was it BBC, to talk about gayism and the fact that it was bound to happen, has to do with the position of Ghana today when it comes to gayism. The position of Ghana today is unknown. At least under Prof. Samuels, our president was categorical. Under President Mahama, he was. At least even if the initial interview didn't clarify it, the people of Ghana put pressure on him to clarify it in subsequent interactions. So why is the same pressure not being put on His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo to also clarify our position as far as gayism is concerned, same-sex marriage? And the claims part of it is what makes me think that the people of Tamale must rise up when the demonstration comes to the region. For example, if a U.S. Army officer from the base that we are told can be established in Tamale decides to have carnal knowledge with your son, same sex.
Decides to sleep with your son.
Yes, decides to sleep with your son. Thank you. because it's radio. I'm trying to be as radio correct as I can be. Yes. So assuming a U.S. soldier who is a man decides to sleep with your son, this agreement under Article 15 claims is saying that as a third party, that disagreement will be settled using U.S. laws if you are making claims. But we know that under U.S. laws, same-sex marriage is not a crime. At least in some states, it's not a crime. So therefore, what it means is that you will have no address at all. Nothing can, assuage your pain. It will be considered lawful. It will be considered acceptable. But if we were allowed to even apply Ghanaian laws, you could get some remedy, because our laws, even as it is ambiguous, still we have evidence of people being punished. At least Dr. Sule Gabas is an example. But we are told that they can come and introduce homosexuality there, and U.S. laws is what will be used to decide if what they are doing is right or not. And that is what we must rise up against. And maybe finally, so that because we don't have time, we move on. It has to do with even the way the exit clauses are couched. You have in the 2015 agreement where no doubt was left at all as to how anybody could exit, any party could exit from the agreement. And so, in fact, Article 8 was explicit: entry into force and termination. And so you had categorical statements being made to the effect that if any party wanted to terminate the agreement, the party could, in writing, indicate to the other party in not less than 180 days. In this 2018 agreement, it seems to me that there is no intention even for a termination. So Article 19 says entry into force, amendment, and duration. You can only amend in some cases. So, and then it says, except as set forth in Article 16, this agreement may only be amended by mutual written agreement of the parties. I mean, when are you ever going? Yes, if we all say that, okay, let's amend, but it has to be mutually agreeable. But in the previous agreements, you had it stated explicitly. In fact, the one that comes closest to the 2015 exit clause is, I think, in the first paragraph, where it says that it shall remain in force unless terminated by either party on 1 year's written notice to the other party through diplomatic channels. 180 days to 1 year now. And like I've already indicated, the first portions that I read cannot even be found in any other agreement we have ever had. So I fail to understand why anybody who has actually taken his time to read these agreements can say that we are simply doing what we have been doing over the years.
My guests this morning have been Mr. Kwesi Pratt Jr. He's the managing editor of the Insights newspaper. Dr. David Percy is a student of history and politics. Mr. Bernard Mona is the national chair of the PNC. The Honorable Hassan Esuhini is member of parliament for Tamale North, and we were supposed to have had a look at two issues, but we're able to deal with only one, and that had to do with the campaign against the Ghana-US military cooperation agreements. The resistance so far is in the form of neo-colonialism and the sale of our sovereignty as a nation. We're supposed to have tackled the 2018 Commonwealth Games and matters arising, but unfortunately we were unable to do that. Maybe God willing, next week when we do have the time, we will table it for discussion. For now, I am grateful to you that you made it a point to stay with me from 9 until now. My name is Samuel Ishen. I wish you a real blessed morning. Stay blessed.